yo.
Hey, what's happening, folks? Welcome to episode number 53 of the Flight Deck Podcast. It's your boy TK, joined with my guy, Mr. Matthew Freeze. What's happening, Matt?
What's going on? What's going on? Glad to be back. I know we've been taking a couple hiatuses here and there, work and everything else. Life is coming at us a little bit right now, but we're trying our best to cover as much as we can. Some news, especially with the combine and draft quickly approaching and free agency. So, a lot to talk about.
Oh, yeah. Matter of fact, as we're recording right now, we got the first day of the combine going on. We got tight ends running, wide receivers running tonight.
Yep.
I forget who else, but yeah, so combines in full swing. I think really this is the unofficial beginning of the off season for me. Starting with the combine, leading up into free agency. We're getting close to teams picking up, deciding to do extensions and whatnot. We heard talk of, they basically came out and said they're picking up Q's 5th-year option. That's a no-brainer, which we all pretty much thought. But yeah, man. Anything interesting around the league that you saw?
There's really, I feel like we're just starting to pick up. We're just getting over that dead time where it's that little jet lag, so to speak, between the Super Bowl and the start of the offseason. So it's starting to pick up now. I mean, I guess the biggest news, I don't know if you really want to talk about it. I don't know if it's even, worthwhile talking about it, is that whole Kyler Murray situation going on where, for those that don't know, he shares the same agent as Marcus May, and we kind of, as Jets fans, already have knowledge of. I think his last name's Eric. I think his first name's Eric Burkhart, if I'm not mistaken. The headache that guy kind of causes for people. So Kyler Murray actually shares the same agent, and sometimes agents are better off to be just that, agents just sitting in the background, not so much being in the limelight. And I just think that this is one of those guys where if Kyler Murray wants a long, prosperous, lucrative, career, he's got to make a change when it comes to his agent, because his agent's just running his mouth talking about, he released this whole letter. I don't have it in front of me, but essentially saying Kyler has dragged this team out of mediocrity. And don't get me wrong, like, they were not a great team at all by any means. I mean, stuff happens, but the letter for your agent to release a letter in the manner he did, saying the things that it said, how Kyler Murray is responsible for why they're, as great as they are, not including the talent around him, the front office down, and the free agent additions, JJ Watt, Chandler Jones, like all these guys, and development of other players, Budda Baker, Isaiah Simmons, that we talked about today. It's just, it's a bad look. I don't really know if that's newsworthy, so to speak, but it was definitely a buzz all around the NFL. And honestly, Kyler's done a great job, but I just don't. I don't think you're in any position right now to be saying I want a new contract. Like, play out your 4th year, and then usually around that 5th year when they pick up your option, that's when you could really start discussing that contract.
Yeah, I mean, I, for one, think people put too much stock into, social media follows and all of that, which is, where a lot of the talk came from, with him unfollowing the Cardinals, and then them unfollowing him likewise. But what's interesting about this situation is that Kyler shares the same agent as his coach, and his coach just re-upped for
2027.
2027. And honestly, it makes more sense for them to do the coach first, considering that, there's so much that will go into Kyler's contract and, everything surrounding it, like, dead money and things of that nature that kind of, like, it really determines how they move forward, signing other people. Like, they have to look at the bottom line a lot closer with Kyler's contract than they did with Cliff Kingsbury. But this whole follow stuff, man, it's gotten to the point of just being absolute, ridiculous. and like I don't really buy into it too much. It's kind of like some sophomore high school type of stuff
Yeah,
to
but
where
it's done to make a point, you know?
yeah, and I get it, right? But my whole thing is, we're grown. If I have a situation with you, Matt, I'm gonna pick up the phone
Mhm.
or I'm gonna message you, Matt. We need to talk. You know what I'm saying?
No, no, I
Rather than
get that.
getting out there like that. But you know,
I
that's
mean, I just got a quick side note, like, about this situation is that and the reason I said like, Kyler has been outstanding the last couple of years, like, we can all agree that he's taken steps forward, leaps and bounds from year 1 to year 3, like, we get that, two-time Pro Bowler, dude has insane amount of rushing or stuff like that, but if we're sitting here, right, in our right mind Kyler's the first pick in the draft, and I get that, but if we're sitting here in our right mind and Lamar Jackson still doesn't have a new contract after winning an MVP, after going to the playoffs to what, 2 out of his 3 seasons, after the production he's put up for that team, and everyone has their thoughts about Lamar, but the reality is the dude has an MVP, right?
right.
He has unproven success, and I'm not saying Kyler doesn't, but if we're going to sit here and we're going to say, oh, Kyler deserves a deal, why is Lamar's 5th-year option getting picked up, and why is he doesn't do these theatrics? So it's just, Kyle, that when I say Kyler isn't in a position to be making demands like this, I just don't think he is, because you don't see guys around the league like Lamar Jackson making a big fuss about this. He wants a new contract. He's going to get a new contract. He earned that contract. But one more side note is Kyler needs to understand that the reason he's probably not going to get a new contract is that rookie deal allows you to have those exorbitant, really nice weapons that you have. The DeAndre Hopkins, that lets you have Chandler Jones, that lets you have JJ Watt, bring in these free agents. So you got to understand that you haven't accomplished nearly anything in the NFL compared to a guy who's won MVP, and they still got to surround you with talent, because most quarterbacks, you don't know what you're getting after all that talent's gone. That's why the draft is so important, and hitting on your picks is so important, because
Yep.
if you don't, your quarterback could get exposed, and that's
Yep.
just what it comes down to.
Yeah. And one other quick thing about it for me is that he can do all this unfollowing and so on and so forth to try to prove a point. They still have him under their thumb for a minimum of 3 years.
If not 4, because they could franchise tag him twice.
Yeah, yeah. So cut the shit and handle your business, and you'll get paid. Lamar about to break the bank, and he hadn't said a word. So now, since we talking about money and things of that nature, I I guess we should talk about the financial situation of the Jets. And I mean, quite honestly, we're in a good position as far as cap and all of that, but there can always be more cap gained through some crucial moves. And I think we'll take some time to talk about who will be some salary cap casualties, right? Um, we've seen Joe D be very shrewd in his moves to save money, a la Chet. I was about to say Channing Crowder. I was watching uh, I Am Athlete earlier. Jameson Crowder last year. We saw how he moved with that, and some of the other deals that he made, to save money. So let's talk a little bit about that. So we're gonna do keep him or cut him. We won't have to take long. It's a couple of we won't have to take long at all. But I'm gonna hit you first with old number 62, Mister Mister Van Rod. Keep him or cut him.
Come on. I mean, come on. Like, is this even worth? We gonna waste like 2-3 minutes of my life that I'm never gonna get back talking about how garbage this guy is, and how what was his cap? I think his cap it's what, 3.5?
Yeah, somewhere in there.
Somewhere in the $3.5 million. Like, it's the single dumbest thing in the world to even have this conversation, because we all know he's gone. He's all but lost the code to enter the building at this point. Like, there's no need for him. There was never a need for him. It was nice when we brought him in. I thought he was gonna, translate well, but it just hasn't worked out. And at $3.5 million, you can't. There's no justification for a roster spot there. That's a roster spot that you can fill with another guy who's marginally, on an NFL roster. So now that's probably the easiest cut in the world from any team in the NFL. Period. There's no
Yeah.
There's no argument you can make to keep him on the roster, especially not at that cap hit. Even at a reduced cap hit, you can't do it.
Yeah, I wouldn't keep him for vet minimum. I wouldn't. And I'm just being honest. No disrespect to him, but we saw his work and his inability to work well. So yeah. All right, cut him. Moving on, number 75, Amari's favorite guy with the short arms, Mr. Chuma Adoga. Keep him or cut him.
Uh, I think he Amari and me have been big proponents of moving him on the inside because he has those tiny arms.
I agree.
But I will say, in that fill-in role, when he came in, I forget what game it was, he played pretty well at left tackle.
He did.
He did. He played up, average to above average football. And honestly, I know it's a small sample size. I know you haven't seen enough, but I just don't listen. He's a Joe Douglas draft pick, correct? He doesn't. Yeah. I mean, we all know that Joe Douglas loves his draft picks, and I think there was enough on tape for you to be like, okay, you can run it back with him because he's on a rookie deal still. He's not making any money. And honestly, if you're letting Van Roten go and you could somehow, I mean, not somehow, anyone could, the coaches could do whatever they want. You can potentially move him on the inside. You don't know what you got because if he can play average football on the outside on that left tackle position for again, I might have been against the Bucks if I'm not mistaken. If he could play that type of football at left tackle, you could probably swing him inside. Maybe you find something. Maybe you have a little bit above average right guard play. And what's the worst that happens? He's on such a minimal amount of money that it's not really going to make a difference anyway if you keep him. So yeah, I give him a roster spot.
Yeah, so his cap hit is like 1.18 or something like that. And like you said, he came in, he was serviceable enough last year, and for that amount, um, I say keep it, man. You saw you had some quality with him as a backup, so I'm on the keep him train. All right, we'll stay with the line and go with Mr. Center, number 60, Mr. CMG Connor McGovern. Keep him or cut him.
That's the easiest keep out of probably this group, honestly. I mean, listen, everyone likes to rag on him, and I think his cap hits somewhere in the ballpark at like 8 to 10 million, if I'm not mistaken.
I think it's 9.5, somewhere
Yeah,
in there.
somewhere in the middle. But I think it's the easiest keep because I mean this is the second year where he's been a league average to above average center. It's not easy finding a quality center, and I know everyone's going to be quick to be like, "Oh, Tyler Linderbaum in the draft," all this other stuff, and like I totally get it, but I mean, you got to keep at least some cohesion in the front of that offensive line. I think Zach Wilson has, and again, God willing that Becton stays healthy, there can be four cohesive players, assuming they all stay healthy on that offensive line. And then that really only leaves you that right guard position that you really got to worry about and address in free agency or through the draft. This is an easy keep. If you could restructure the deal, I'm all for it because 9.5 is quite a bit of money. But if he was to go into the season playing on that, I wouldn't bat an eye because at the end of the day, he's been an average to above average center. And what's the worst case scenario is that he walks next year.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're talking about cutting him this year and he walks next year after another year of quality performance to cash out, so be it. At least you got 3 of his better years.
Yeah. Listen, man, I am 100% on keeping him, and I'll even argue for you know restructuring or changing this deal to where you get an extra year out of
Yeah.
it. Next year at a reduced rate. A lot of people talk about his age, which he's 29, but let's be real. Offensive linemen, they last a long time, especially ones who don't have to do a lot of pulling and whatnot. I mean, hell, Andrew Whitworth is 38,
Now he's
39.
41.
He's 41?
He's 40 or
Jesus.
41. I think he turned 41 the week after the Super Bowl or something like that.
Okay, so you can look at Andrew Whitworth. He's played at a high level, still getting paid, at left tackle, which is a lot harder to do than at center. And we've seen CMG. We saw his stats as far as giving up hurries and rushes and sacks, and he didn't do that a lot. So I'm all about cohesion. I'm all about chemistry, and I do think that keeping him builds on that cohesion, builds on that chemistry, and it allows them to gel even better when you don't have to replace two or three guys on the line when all
And
you're looking for is maybe another tackle or right guard.
the only other important factor here is that you got to remember they were learning another new blocking scheme this year.
Yeah,
So it's like now they already have a full year, and we saw down the line they were an average to above average unit as a whole. So keep the cohesion. They're gonna have another year in it. Becton hopefully is gonna come back better and in shape, and obviously injury free, God willing. And listen, you add a right guard, and you're talking about a potential top 12 offensive line because they're already comfortable in the system. You're bringing in a rookie that'll take a couple weeks, but you'll definitely have a chance to build upon that. So I think it's a no brainer. You keep him restructure, sure, but it's a no brainer. You don't cut a guy like that.
I totally agree. All right, let's move to the defensive side of the ball. Sheldon Rankins. Now he's due to make I think 10 million this year. Would you keep him or cut him?
Was it 10 million?
I think it's 10.
I could have sworn it was like 5.
Or I could be wrong.
Yeah,
let me
if
make.
you want to just double check on that, because if it's 10 million, that's the easiest cut out of all these guys. Because I don't think he offers enough. I don't think
I'm sorry. He signed for 2 years for 11, so
it's like
it's
5 or
five.
6.
Yeah,
Okay. I mean, honestly, listen, Sheldon Rankins offers a good amount of pass rush potential and ability, and I know he's had a couple of ACL or Achilles injuries, and it's tough to come back and get your explosiveness back from something like that. So, like, I totally get it, but I don't think, if I'm being honest, I don't think that he should be on the roster, and I do think that he is potentially a cap casualty because listen, the Jets, and I'll just quickly touch on this. The Jets are in such an advantageous position with the draft this year and such an advantageous position cap wise that you can potentially get away with moving John Franklin Myers inside because I think his skill set fits that better because he's a bigger guy. So I think you could potentially move him in and he can slot into where Rankins was on second and third down on passing downs, and then you can potentially draft an edge rusher. So I don't see a role for Rankins. Now, if you can reduce his rate to vet minimum or 1 year a mil, okay, maybe I'll entertain the idea of keeping him. But at that cap hit, I just don't think he offers enough to actually warrant a roster spot and that much money.
I'm uh I'm actually for keeping him. Um, he was like third on the team in sacks, and he did that in a reduced role. Like he made plays when he was in the game. Now, if they can, manage to restructure and shave some of that or convert some of that to, bonus money to give more cap space, cool. However, but I do think he would be a solid part of this rotation. I know we have Jonathan Marshall, and I'm sure they'll draft somebody else, but I think it's something to say for veteran experience. Plus, I think he, another year removed from being, that major injury, I think he can be pretty dynamic this year. So I'm on the keep him train.
Mm. I don't know, man. It's tough because you also got Foley, who's a free agent. And if you can
Yeah.
somehow cut him and allocate those resources to Foley, and it's kind of a net of zero additional dollars spent, you,
Well, let me say this: if it comes down to keeping him and keeping Foley, then of course, hands down, without a doubt, I'm cutting him and giving it all to Foley.
yeah, for sure.
You know, staying on the defensive side of the ball, we got your boy, number 53, uh, which that number amounts to like total minutes he's played in 2 years, I believe. Mr. Brian Cashman. Cut him now or cut him tomorrow. I don't think keep him is even.
Blake Cashman needs to get cut, and I don't think it's from lack of talent. I don't think I don't think he can't play. I think that he's a pretty decent player, but you can't fill up a roster spot or I guess an injured reserve slot, so to speak, every year and just expect to stay on a roster. Now, the Jets' luck in the past would be they're going to cut him and he's going to go star for someone else. So it's almost inevitable. But you can't keep tying up a roster spot. I think he has all the talent in the world. I think he could be a starting linebacker in the NFL. But I just don't think that he can stay healthy enough consistently to warrant a roster spot. And it sucks too, because I think all of us, when we drafted him and we saw him on the field in that limited time, we thought that he definitely had the potential to be, at worst, a 2-down linebacker.
Yeah.
At least a run stopper. So it's a tough pill to swallow because I think he's a talented guy, and I hope he can stay healthy. But tying up a roster spot, I don't see it.
Yeah, I'm all with you on that, man. Like this is definitely not about lack of talent, his play. Because I mean, when he plays, he gets out there, he gets after it, sideline to sideline. But I mean, availability is the best ability, and he just don't have it, man. So yeah, I agree. We cut it. Uh, Last one we got running back LaMichael P. Ryan. Keep him a cutter.
I'd keep him. I think he carved out a role on the kick return team. I think he has. I still think he has. First of all, I think he has something to offer in the run game. I really do. I think Ty Johnson was enough of a disappointment last year for us. I think Michael Carter is obviously running back one.
Yep.
Tevin Coleman's going to be gone. He signed that 1 year. I don't see a reason why you can't keep him. It's not like you're paying him a lot of money or anything like that. And honestly, I think that he offers enough in the kick game that you can warrant a roster spot for him. And I don't think he's getting, I don't know how much he's getting paid off the top of my head. I can't imagine. So it's, over $1.5 million, if that. But no, I think he offers enough. And honestly, I don't think that there's enough tread on the tires anyway, that if you did bring in another running back, if you drafted another running back, he can't be running back number 3 and carve out a further role on the kick return game.
Yeah, so he was drafted in 20, and he signed a 4-year deal worth like 4.4 million, somewhere up in there. So yeah, he has a cap hit this year of just a hair over $1 million. And you cut him, you got a dead cap of 372,000. So yeah, I mean, like you said, I don't think he got enough run, pardon the fun, but I do think that he can carve himself out of role, especially at that cheap amount. And running backs get hurt constantly. So I think it'll be good to have a guy who knows the system, who's been in the system, and if he stays healthy, I think he will be a solid piece. And I'm not saying he'll get out there and get 600-700 yards, but I do think he can get in there and get that tough first down here and there, spell Michael Carter and whoever else they bring in. So yeah, I'm all about keeping it.
Okay.
So we talked about people to cut for over cap and things like that. Now, one of the things that we talked about a lot during the down period or whatever, that a lot of news has been going around about trades and guys who the Jets have been eyeing or should be eyeing, and all of that. So I'm gonna throw some guys out to you, um, as far as trade targets, and I want to get your take on either yes or no your trade for 'em and what you would give up for 'em. All right.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. First up, we got Amari Cooper, Dallas Cowboys wide receiver, $22 million cap hit. Trade for him or let it ride.
I would. This is one of those trades where it's like it's contingent upon a couple of things. First and foremost, will the Dallas Cowboys eat some of that cap hit? Because $22 million for Amari Cooper. Listen, he's a great wide receiver. I don't think he's a top 5 wide receiver. I think he's a fringe top 10 wide receiver, and $22 million is a lot of money to tie into wide receivers. When you also, if you trade for him at the full cap hit, you have him plus you have another $12.5 million tied up in Corey Davis. So right there, you're paying what, 30, 34, $36 million between just two players. Now I
Yep.
understand Zach Wilson's on the rookie deal. Like I understand it all, but like I just don't see it as a viable option. Now, if Dallas is willing to eat, let's say anywhere in the ballpark of 7 to 10, and you can get him on that similar deal, so to speak, that Corey Davis is getting. Maybe even if you want to push it to, let's say they eat 8 million and he's still making 14. I'm all for it. Now, what would I give up at that cap hit at $14 million? Dallas is kind of going to be desperate to be shedding cap because they've just dealt such big contracts to players. So for me personally, I think a second rounder, maybe the Panthers second rounder, but I wouldn't go anywhere near a first rounder for him. And you kind of have to know that Dallas is going to be asking for that, especially if they made it abundantly clear that their priority this offseason is to re-sign Michael Gallup. So, they're going to be looking to shed some cap, and with the emergence of CeeDee Lamb, it's probably going to be Amari, but I don't know if you can find a way to finagle him out of there without asking them to take some of his cap.
Yeah. For me, it's a no for a lot of the reasons that you stated. The biggest being that $22 million cap hit, and with Dallas being up against the cap with other needs and all of that, I don't see them, eating any of it. And I don't know what his dead number is, but yeah, I don't, not for that much. So yeah,
No,
it's
it's a
it's a
little
no.
much.
All right. Up next, Mr. Mr. Robbie Anderson, former
No,
Jet.
no, just
No.
at that cap hit again. It's too much money for a guy who's not. Listen, I'm not trying to be cheap. I'm not trying to penny pinch or anything like that. But the reality is $17 million for Robbie Anderson. If that's the going rate for wide receivers that aren't even number ones, let alone number twos. I mean, DJ Moore was the number one for that team. They got Terrace Marshall, who had a decent rookie season, who didn't produce because I think he got a little bit injured, but when he was on the field, he was playing well. Robbie Anderson at $16.8 million. I ain't even entertaining the idea of it. It's not even worth bringing up how much it would cost because you had your chance last year, and if you really wanted to sign him, you probably could have got him for cheaper. Probably by cheaper, I mean like you probably could have signed him to like a 4-year, $40 million deal when he was with us as an extension. So there's no reason to trade for him at a $16.88 million cap hit. Let the Panthers deal with that, and if they cut him and you can sign him to a similar deal to what you got Keelan Cole on this year, sure, he'd be a nice number 3.
Yeah. I'm a Robbie guy. Loved him. But it's all, water under the bridge now and just move forward. So yeah, it's a no for me. Up next, Brandon Cooks, who should have been a Jet anyway, but trade for him or let it go.
Polar opposite of Robbie Anderson. First and foremost, his cap hit is relatively close to being the same anyway, but the production's there. I think he's had 1,000-yard season with 5
Every
different teams every year.
every team he's went to.
And this isn't even a joke, right? Because like he played for what? He played for the Saints, right?
Yep.
Saints had a noodle arm Drew Brees. So take that for what you will. He played with the Texans, who had Davis Mills this year. He played for the Patriots. And who did he play for? The Rams with
He played.
Ford?
Yeah, he played with golf with the Rams. Uh, he had Deshaun in 2020, Davis Mills in 21, and then
Brady.
Drew Brees, and had Brady for 1 year.
Okay, so that tells me all I need to know. The dude's productive. He's exactly what this team needs. He's a burner. He can run the 9 route, but he could run over. He's fearless over the middle. It's an easy yes for me. Would I ask for a reduction in the cap? Absolutely, but I think the Texans are in a good cap situation right now, if I'm not mistaken, especially with the Deshaun Watson news. Hopefully soon coming to an end where they can figure out what's going on with that. So it's the easiest yes in the world, and honestly, I would give up a second round pick, one of the second round picks, without thinking twice. I just think that he's that good of a wide receiver, and he would complement what we already have. Him and Elijah Moore on the him and Elijah Moore. Honestly, Brandon Cooks can play on the outside. He can play on the inside. He can play every wide receiver position. He's what we wish Denzel Mims could have been, and not from a physical attribute side, but more of a Denzel Mims doesn't know all three positions, but they're trying to teach him all three positions. Brandon Cooks can play, X, Y, and slot.
Yeah,
So it's an easy yes. And honestly, if I got him, it's him and Elijah Moore on the outside. Corey Davis can be on the inside. They can move it around and they can make it work.
I agree. I would love to have him. Production means everything in this game. And for him to do it with so many different teams, so many different systems, so many different types of quarterbacks says a lot about him. So yeah, I'd do it for the right price. Mr. Mr. Slant God can't guard Michael Thomas. 25 million.
No, I love him as a player. He is a slant god. He's an underneath god. He's a great route runner. He can beat people deep. He can take a 5-yard slant and turn it into a 60-yard gain. Like he has the speed. Listen, man, at a reduced cap hit, I'd think about it, but $25 million for a guy that's coming off an injury that didn't really. I don't think he played a game last season. You really haven't seen him without Drew Brees either, and I don't mean that to say that he's a product of Drew Brees, but I'm just trying to be honest here. I don't see I don't see it as a viable option. If you can somehow get him for a reduced rate, and I'm talking like super reduced, because I think the Saints are in cap hell, and they
Yeah,
just restructured, I think, Ryan Ramczyk and someone else, and they saved 26 mil, and they're still like 40 over.
I think they restructured him too.
Oh, well, I mean, nonetheless, if you can somehow get him on a restructured, cheaper deal, and I'm talking like significant, I'm talking like $14 million less, $12 million less. Okay, I'd entertain it, but as it stands right now with that cap hit, there's no chance that I wouldn't even sniff the phone to call them.
Yeah, I'm the same. My only issue is the cap and the amount of capital it would cost to get him. So you can't have a guy who's a record breaking wide receiver. You're not getting him for a second or third or fourth, anything like that. So
DeAndre Hopkins would like a word.
yeah, but we're talking about the Texans, and Bill O'Brien is a complete idiot. They traded him because he didn't want to pay him an extra $2 or $3 million a year. So you know, you can't account for stupidity.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Up next, Mr. Calvin Ridley, Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah, I would do it. I think that there was a lot that came out. I don't want to speak too much on it, but Calvin Ridley's issue wasn't so much. I mean, it was definitely mental health related, but a lot of it had to do with the Atlanta area, and he was robbed a couple times at gunpoint, I believe, if I read the article correctly. His house was burglarized multiple times. Like it that can have a mental toll on you, and that's potentially why he wants out. More so. So at that cap hit, of course, I don't see a problem with that because he's a number one. Like that's just what he is. His production's there. He's a talented guy. I think him and Elijah Moore would be one of the most dynamic duos in the NFL. I think we're talking about two 1,000-yard receivers easily next year. Because if you projected Elijah Moore's stats over 17 games, I think they said he would have had somewhere near 1,300 yards and like 10 or so touchdowns, 10, 11, 12
Yeah,
touchdowns. So I think Calvin Ridley is a no-brainer. The problem that you run into with him is he needs a new deal. And the Jets can afford to give him a new deal because they got Zach Wilson going into their second year. So you can give him a potential 4-year extension. The only other issue people have is he's on the older side. He came into the league, I believe, at 24, if I'm not mistaken. He's, I think, going to be 28, 29 by the time the season starts. So it's it's a little tough if you want to. The drop off for wide receiver is significantly less than the drop off of a running back. So I still think he would be worth it. And if you can structure a deal in such a way that it's front loaded, you get the best production at the highest price Will Zach's on his contract, and you can find an easy way out. Towards the back end if the production falls off. I'm all for it. So yeah, absolutely. And what do I think it'll cost to get him? Probably our second rounder because it's higher than the Panthers, but I think a second rounder and potentially a fourth. And I'd be willing to pay that price because I'd rather get the proven thing than potentially take a shot in the dark, especially on wide receivers where we've been burned more often than not at the
yep,
wide receiver position in the draft. I mean, I can go through a list of names that we've been burned off of. Elijah Moore being the only one that I can think of right now that has actually been a hit. And but I just can't sit there and ignore the fact that you can potentially have a wide receiver core, Calvin Ridley, Elijah Moore, and Corey Davis, who are all going to be 28 or younger, and that's for your young quarterback. And we already have discussed that our offensive line is one piece away from really being a solid unit. So I think it's a no-brainer.
I agree. I pay that cost, re-sign him to a deal, give up a second and a fourth without any question. So yeah, I agree. We'll go one more on the offensive side of the ball. DJ Moore.
Uh, Easiest yes again. I mean, again, the production's there. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who he plays with. It doesn't matter at all. He needs a new deal similar to Calvin Ridley. I think they came in. Did they come in the same draft? I don't remember.
I I think
Oh, I think I might be mistaken. I think he came in one draft before Calvin Ridley. I don't know. I'm not entirely sure. They might have came in or whatnot, but I mean, nonetheless, DJ Moore is an animal. I mean, I think he has in his first 4 years, he has 1,000 yard all purpose yards every season. And I
no,
know,
it was the same draft,
oh, they did.
2018.
Okay. So without a doubt, I mean, it's a no-brainer. I think that he potentially costs the same as Calvin Ridley. He would also fall into the need of a new contract because obviously they came in the second year. But at that cap hit, listen, there's no price too big to pay to surround your young quarterback with talent, and DJ Moore has done it. And again, this is just the same case. Him and Calvin Ridley have the same measurables. Both of them can run the whole route tree. I think DJ Moore's got a little more speed over the top, but and they both go up and they get the ball. So it's a no-brainer. DJ Moore's been one of the wide receivers I've admired for years. Um, and I just think that you just can't go wrong if you get either of these guys. And I really I know people don't think that there's legs to this, but there's been rumors about this since the end of the season, a month ago. So it's I think DJ Moore's a no-brainer. Second and a fourth should probably get it done. But I think the question comes into play is, are the Panthers going to get fleeced again by us?
I don't think they answered the call from Joe D.
No.
You know, fool me once is all they gonna give him. All right, so we have we talked about some offensive players. We'll slide over. I got a couple defensive players I want to talk about. Um, First one up, I think is all of our favorite, Mr. Danielle Hunter, 26 million.
No-brainer. Listen, wide receivers are one thing. Premier edge rushers that have been doing it consistently that are only, I believe he's 26. He came in the league when he was young. I think he was 20, 21 when he came in, right?
Very young.
He's very young. He's been producing since day one, and that's with or without Everson Griffin on the other side of him. So it's a no-brainer. 26 million it is quite a bit of money. I don't know his current contract structure right now. I think this is like the highest it gets, and then he's a free agent.
His contract is so weird. Because they to keep him last year, they added some years that are essentially voided, but I don't know. It's like they front loaded it. It's crazy. Like I was reading about it. We talked about it earlier. I just can't remember all the details about it. But his contract is pretty crazy.
Yeah,
But
but
I was still
I think that it doesn't matter. If you can go out there and eliminate a need via the trade market, and first and foremost via the trade market, I'm loosely saying that because that's a big cap hit, and from what I understand, the Vikings don't want to pay that. So he's a potential cap casualty. I don't know what his dead cap is, but he's a potential cap casualty also.
his dead cap is 7.5.
So they save almost $20 million by cutting him. So listen, you go out there and when a team is potentially going to be cutting a guy that you really want, you can, I don't want to say lowball, but you can probably get away with throwing them something because they'd rather get something than cut them and get nothing. So
yeah, I
ahead.
agree. No, I was just gonna add that I would definitely make the trade because yes, his cap hit is 26 this year, but next year is only 8.5. So you're essentially getting it for 17 per.
Yeah. So listen, that's a no-brainer. And honestly, I don't think you're not paying a first rounder. I don't think for him, especially not for a guy that is potentially on the cutting block. I think that maybe a second, but if I'm being real honest, and I know the team's probably going to cut him, if anything, you could probably get him for a third. It's probably going to be a bidding war, if anything. Who gives the highest pick, and they'll just trade him to him. So I think maybe a third, maybe a fourth gets it done, but I'd be more than willing to give up a second round pick if it came down to it.
I agree. Up next, we got DJ Greenlaw, linebacker, 2.6 million.
We need speed at the linebacker position. He has familiarity with the defensive system. I mean, he has familiarity with Saleh and whatnot. Um, yeah, I think it's a no brainer. Had a decent year last year. I'm pretty sure he came back off injury, if I'm not mistaken. Um, I think it's a no brainer. Familiarity with the system. You could plug him in. You wouldn't have to worry about him. I think it could potentially have some sort of mitigating effect on his ability to play so much, because you're sitting there and you're hoping Hamza makes a jump. You're hoping Jamie Sherwood comes back and makes a leap. But I think for sure you can justify the trade. I don't think it's going to take much. I think a fifth round, sixth round pick. I don't think anything crazy is going to get this trade done, and his cap hit isn't too bad either. So I mean, he very well could just be a cut guy and then come over to us. But if Salah wants him and he has familiarity with the system, you go out there and you get him and you don't question it, because you're going to get production out of him.
Yeah, I totally agree. For all the reasons you said, and he was poised to be a starter, a big time starter in San Francisco. Then he got hurt, and then Fred Warner and I forget the other kid they got. Just came on strong, and they say you don't lose your position to injury, but he did.
Yep.
So you know I would definitely take him. He's still young. If he's healthy, he's cheap. You can get him for cheap. So yeah, it's a definite yeah for me. All right. Up next, we got Miles Jack, linebacker, Jacksonville.
It's tough, man. It's really tough because he's a hell of, I think he also came in the league when he was really young. I think he was like 20 something years old again. Like I think he was like Demontre Moore type young, like 20 years old. Play
Yeah, he was.
He was 20 years old or something like that. He was really young. So I venture to guess he's only like 26, 27 right now. So he's just hitting his prime years. He's been an above average player for Jacksonville, but that's not saying much because Jacksonville doesn't really churn out a lot of talent. I mean, they've invested a lot in that defense. I think Miles Jack was the first pick in the second round, if I'm not mistaken. They got Josh Allen on that defense, Caleb on Chase on that defense, Taven Bryan on that defense. They're all either former first round picks or high second round picks. Miles Jack, another guy I want to, obviously from the Jaguars that I want to list here is Josh Allen, because I can say that, but Miles Jack, I would entertain it. I don't know what it would cost. The cap hit's a little much, especially to tie up as much as they're tying up in CJ Mosley. I think it's another 15 mil, if I'm not mistaken, or 17.5 mil in CJ Mosley this year. So to tie up close to $30 million in between those two linebackers. Now, if you can get him at a reduced cap hit and you can get the Jaguars to eat, because I think the Jaguars rolled somewhere in the ballpark of $27 million from prior year cap to this year cap. So they can afford to eat some of that cap hit. They're not desperate for more space, so to speak. So I think, yeah, without a doubt, this at a reduced cap hit, I think a third rounder would get this done. I don't think he's worth a second rounder. I think he's a great player. I think he would be a terrific sideline to sideline defender for us. And I think he would pair really nicely with CJ Mosley, but I don't know if I'm willing to eat that cap and tie up, 30 something $million in between your linebackers, unless you also can, and I think this is going to be a topic of discussion, is can you get CJ Mosley at a reduced cap hit? So, I mean, this is kind of another no-brainer if they go this route, but I don't know how feasible it is currently with the current structure of the middle linebackers.
So I would take Miles Jack heartbeat, back to back, 100+ yard, 100+ tackle season. He's only 26 years old. I think he may have a couple. Yeah, he's got one more year left on his deal after this season. Um, I think the kid is awesome, honestly.
I think he's
Great side,
underrated.
huh?
Underrated for sure.
Yeah, sideline to sideline presence. Like you said, he'll go good with CJ. He would also be good to be in house replacement for CJ. after this season as well. So I would definitely go for him. And small tidbit info: him and Michael P. Ryan are like first cousins. So you know,
Just
I
to
do.
just one more quick side note, and he's not. We don't have him listed because I don't think it's come up yet. But when you look at the structure of the Jaguars defense and what they're going to be potentially doing in the draft this season and whatnot, I do think it is worth a call to see if you can get Josh Allen. I really
Yeah,
do. I think because they're gonna have to pay him, right? Obviously, they can afford to with Trevor Lawrence on the rookie deal, but they got their own in-house free agents. They're gonna want to go out there and they're gonna want to spend on other free agents. I think Josh Allen's worth the call, and if the Jets can somehow finagle Josh Allen away from them, that might open them up to pick, Kayvon Thibodeau or Aiden Hutchinson with that first pick. Because right now, as far as I'm concerned, the Jaguars are in a position to take a left tackle, one of Evan Neal or Ekem, and they're going to stray away from that left. From that edge rusher. But if the Jets can make a move for Josh Allen, I know it sounds crazy, but maybe he hasn't been as productive as they would like. I know he had a game last year where he picked the other Josh Allen off. He scored a touchdown against the other Josh Allen, and he sacked him and he caused the fumble, if I'm not mistaken. But and of course he's one of my favorite prospects to come out in a while. So Josh Allen would also be another name that I would look to watch. He's one of those guys where if you can somehow get him away from the Jaguars, I'd be willing to trade that 10th pick in a heartbeat.
yeah. I think we all wanted him instead of Q during that
Uh,
draft.
from a scheme perspective, a scheme fit, yes, because we were running the 3-4 at the
Oh
time,
yeah,
and we thought that he would be a perfect 3-4 edge. At the time, it was more of an outside linebacker edge role, but
yeah,
he's proven that he can play as a hand in the ground defender, and you could bring him in and you can put him opposite, you know, Carl Lawson when he comes back, and you got two guys that can fly around the edge.
yep. But yeah, it's definitely a yeah for me on Jack and a yeah for me on Allen. We do one more. So
Who we got? Yeah.
we got Marcus Peters, cornerback, Baltimore Ravens.
Uh, I would entertain the idea because I like Marcus Peters as a player. I just don't think that he would fit our system. I think he is the prototypical risk taker. He's
Yeah,
going to get burned 50, 40 to 45% of the time, and he's going to pick them off or make a spectacular play the other 55% of the time. I don't think that's what this defense needs. I think we saw firsthand that Bryce Hall is more than capable of being a two at worst cornerback. If he learns how to get his head around, he could be a number one and easily, in my opinion, or at least a 1B. I don't think Marcus Peters moves the needle. Yeah, the cap hit's not that bad. I would entertain it for a fifth round pick or something like that, but I don't think he fits what this defense is looking for right now. I think that he's not. We play more zone, and he's a guy that's going to potentially play more man. So I don't know. It's tough. I would entertain it, but I just don't see him as a scheme fit right now because I think we're asking our corners to run more zone and stay on one side and whatnot. I don't know. I haven't watched enough of him to know. I know his Kansas City days were a little bumpy because they would run man and he tried to undercut so many routes and so many. He made some great plays. He was an All Pro a couple, I think, or a Pro Bowler a couple times. But sometimes the juice isn't worth the squeeze. So I would pass, but I would entertain it a little bit.
yeah, he's definitely a feast or famine type of cornerback. Um, I do like him though. He's a tough guy, hard nosed. Um, and his cap hit isn't that high, but he's coming off that ACL injury that he suffered in preseason in practice. So that would worry me. But again, if it's for fifth or later and that cheap of a cap hit, I give it a spin. I mean, our defense was so terrible that beggars can't really be choosers, especially if we can get a guy that we know can produce even with all his faults. So yeah, I would definitely give it a whirl. So today today was the start of the NFL Combine, and we had the tight ends run and the wide receivers run. Did you catch much of it, Matt?
Yeah, I've actually had it on in the background. There's some interesting tidbits to come out of here. I mean, right now it looks like the quarterbacks are running. Or I'm sorry, they're throwing the ball a little bit, but overall, I mean, it's been pretty impressive and a little bit of disappointment between some of the wide receivers and whatnot. I don't know if you want to get into any names or anything like that, but I got some little snippets that I took from it.
Yeah, so I tell you what we'll do. You can just throw out a couple names that you got, and next week's episode when all three of us here, we're gonna really just get into all of it once. Your linebackers and all of that run and pass rushes. That way we can have a full fleshed out conversation. But by all means, throw out the tidbits that you got for today.
All right, so I guess we can start off with a lot of Jets fans. I wouldn't say favorite prospect, but one of our guys to watch, Traylon Burks, came in at people had him listed at, I think Arkansas had him listed at about 6'3", came in at about 6'2". People rumored his hands were gigantic, 10 inches, 10 and a half inches or something like that. Came in at 9 7/8, so almost that 10-inch mark. But listen, I'm not someone who puts a lot of stock into the measurements. I like to see how they, do on the field. And Traylon Burks, again, ran a 40 time. Of his first 40 was a 4.55. People were saying a 4.4 would be ridiculous, whatever. 4.5 and then a 4.55 and then a 4.50 flat. People got to understand. And my thing with the NFL draft and the combine is that people are so quick to put stock into things that don't really, matter. Some players play faster than they do, in a workout, so to speak. So Traylon Burks, to a lot of people, was a disappointing combine for him. Me, not so much. I mean, 6'2" is what he came in at. That 4.5 at 225 is pretty damn fast. And funny enough, he's in line with guys like AJ Brown, and we all know how much I love AJ Brown, how much Amari loves AJ Brown, and we'd love to have AJ Brown on our roster. So Traylon Burks came in, and people were a little underwhelmed by his performance, but I ultimately think that he's running a 4.5 flat at 225, coming in well above 6 feet with well above sized hands. So I don't see why people are so down on him. He's still my wide receiver number one. He still reminds me of Deebo Samuel. I still think that if he's there at 10 and someone doesn't take him sooner, you have to at least entertain the idea of taking him. So that's just that's one of the guys that I was reading about. I watched some of the workout and stuff like that, and I was impressed for a guy his size to do what he was doing. But some people had other things to say.
Yeah, I think that 4.55 that he ran probably turned off a few people, but I also think that it will be a lot better than that once he goes to his pro day.
Yeah.
You know, but again, like we've seen some Blazers in the 40s that don't do anything in the league. You know, who's that we got in the second round a few years ago?
Devin Smith, Justin Ward,
Devin Smith,
John Ross.
Yeah. So, I'm all about how they do on the field. Like I put more stock into the drills as far as like the gauntlet, shuttle, and all of that than I do with the straight out 40. So that's what I'm looking for.
Oh, for sure. And I think that, again, measurables are one thing, but when you put on his tape, and I urge everyone to go watch his tape, he did it in the SEC where you're playing against the best of the best. He plays a lot faster than that 40 time would suggest, because that's just how some players are. Some players play faster in game speed, because you're running away from someone. You're trying to create space against someone. Running against air isn't nearly as difficult or I'm sorry, as competitive, and doesn't give that that boost that some players get when they're playing against competition. So I don't know. I didn't leave too upset with his drills, but you're right. If I was him, I'd probably shed 15 pounds by pro day. Go out there, run a mid 4.4. Yeah, assuming he gets with a strength and conditioning coach or whatever. If he's not already with one, shed 10 pounds, and you're sitting there at the same, damn near close to the same. He's definitely taller than Rashad Bateman was last year when he ran a 4.45. So listen, Traylon Burks is still my wide receiver one, wide receiver two, but I wasn't too disappointed. But some people were quick to throw shade at him.
Yeah. So, like I said, we're gonna really get into it. Episode 54, um, all of it. But one last tidbit that I want to throw out there, give people something to think about over the weekend. Something you brought to my attention. Uh, was the quarterback from Liberty turning some heads. You know, making people take notice, and all the talk has been, teams have been falling in love with it. So, with that being said, you think that number 4 pick could be in play as far as trade if he does well, in the combine and his pro day?
All indications are, and he's actually throwing. He was just throwing, unless I don't know if he already threw, and this is just a replay because I just got home. But I think without a doubt, I mean, we see this every year, right? We see this every year. A quarterback jumps to the top, whether it's one we expect or one we don't. I mean, Joe Burrow came out of nowhere when he transferred into LSU, and then he just jumped to the top, right? I mean, we see it every year. So Malik Willis went out there. All everything I read was he was impressing people with his interview, his play recognition, his ability to maintain, withhold, so to speak, retain information is the word I'm looking for. And then on the field, I mean, the dude has the strongest arm. I think at the Senior Bowl, if I'm not mistaken, he threw some ball the equivalent of like 70 miles per hour down the field, which was ridiculously fast, according to that metric. I don't know specifically what metric they used, but from the Senior Bowl down, you see the comps, you see the athleticism. I absolutely do think it's in play that he could potentially even go as high as number 2 if Detroit falls in love with him. I mean, we all know the Jaguars aren't, but listen, we've been hoping for quarterbacks to make that leap, and this very well could be that moment where Malik Willis makes that leap and he jumps into that top 5 conversation. And a team like potentially Philadelphia, who everyone is quick to say Jalen Hurts, but I saw Nick Sirianni throw Jalen Hurts on the bus all year for the most part about him not having his best game. So I absolutely think that he's in play for any pick from 1 to 4. So it's gonna be really interesting to see. And I think that if the Jets find themselves in a position where Ekem's gone, Kayvon's gone, and Aiden's gone, I think you really do have to entertain the idea of trading back. And I think that there will be plenty of teams, especially if he works out well. Look at the Washington football team, because the commander's name is absolutely garbage. Look at the Steelers. Look at the Eagles. Denver potentially could be looking at a quarterback. I mean, we still got to wait to see what happens with Deshaun, and we got to wait to see what happens with Aaron Rodgers. But you got a bunch of teams that could potentially be looking at quarterback. And if one of them separates themselves from the pack, I think that the Jets absolutely should be on the phone, and they should absolutely fleece another team of future assets and current assets just because they can. Because when you come up for a quarterback, it's usually paying a premium well above cap slot value
Yeah.
or pick slot value. Sorry.
So here's my hope. I hope that he blows them all away, and I hope that him and other guys do their thing, because if who we want at 4 isn't there, and who we don't want at 4 is still there, I would really love for a team to take that decision away from him, and trade up to get their man. So I if KB in there, and I know you guys are high on Ikwanku, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. Him or Neil, the tackles. I'm pretty much all in on KB. I don't think Aiden Hutchinson will be there at all. We all agree no to Kyle Hamilton. So it wouldn't bother me if he blows somebody away and the Jets trade that number 4. Because this draft is deep in places that we need, and it wouldn't hurt my feelings at all. Or if they pick someone at 4 and trade at 10, even though I kind of want Sauce Gardner there or somebody of the like. But we'll get into all of that on another episode. But yeah, we got the combine going. It'll be going on all weekend, and we're gonna really get into it with the whole team on episode 54. So, you got anything you want to add to close us out, man?
No, man. I know we had a little bit of a heated debate on picks and who's right, who's wrong about picks and whatnot. But I just think that that's the beauty of the draft. That's the beauty of free agency, is that you get to debate your stance on things, and you can use facts, logic, again, opinions, whatever to prove to whomever that the picks that you want or don't want are the right moves to the franchise. And I'm just hoping that no matter what happens, the Jets sit down, and I know they asked Saleh some questions about safety and unicorns and all this other baloney. But I just hope that the Jets really do sit down. They do exactly what they did last year. They go through the same process that they did last year, and maybe, just maybe, and we talked about this in the group chat, maybe the chips are falling in our direction now, the right way, because we saw what our draft class looked like last year. No one thought we were going to get Michael Carter or Elijah Moore or AVT. I mean, we thought we were going to get AVT, but that's a different story. But no one thought we were going to do any of that, and they fell our way. So maybe this is the year that Kayvon falls, or we get one of the premier edge rushers, or Ekwonu turns into the super stud that we think he can be. So I don't know, man. It is a lot to be excited about with the franchise. So I'm excited to see how the combine plays out, and then free agency is shortly after.
Yeah, I'm the same, man. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens this weekend. I'm more excited not about the big name guys, but the Sky Moores and those guys who could become high risers because of their what they do at the combine, in addition to their tape or whatever. So I'm more interested in looking for like the diamonds in the rough, and guys that a lot of people don't talk about, like folks we talked about last year that blew up or had good years, like your Benjamin St. Juice and guys like that who we talked about and not too many people were talking about. So I'm looking forward to doing that again and bringing it to the people. So yeah, I'm real excited about it. So looking forward to next week.
Yeah, for sure.
So with that being said, folks, this has been episode number 53 of the Flight Deck Podcast. As always, we appreciate you guys for rocking with us, for tuning in, and we're on YouTube and on our page now, so you can find us in video form as well as audio on our podcast. Make sure to subscribe to the Flight Deck Podcast on all your favorite podcast platforms: Apple, Google, Stitch, Spotify, Anchor, Overcast, all of those. We're there. So search us out, subscribe, give us a listen, and we really appreciate it. So on behalf of my guy, Mr. Matthew Freeze, on behalf of our Mr. Compadre, Mr. Amari Brown, it's your boy TK. We appreciate you guys. We love you guys. And we look forward to talking to you for episode number 54 next week. Y'all have a good one.
Oh, yes! No! I see y'all.